One of us carries two versions within ourselves: the person who dreams, perseveres, and acts, and the person who hesitates, doubts, and gives up. The first version propels us forward. The second keeps us trapped in mediocrity. The difference between a life of achievement and a life of regret is not luck. It is the decision to confront and destroy the weak version of yourself that surrenders when things get tough. To begin this transformation, we must understand why the weak version exists. It thrives on comfort, excuses, and the fear of failure. It whispers, "It's too hard, not now. You'll never make it." And if we listen too long, it becomes our default. But growth is never found in comfort. Every meaningful achievement, every story worth telling was written by someone who chose action over surrender, courage over complacency. Destroying this weak version requires self-awareness. You cannot defeat what you do not see. Identify the moments when you give up, the projects left unfinished, the commitments avoided, the potential ignored. These are the fingerprints of the weaker self. Examining them honestly without shame. Recognition is the first step toward revolution. Next comes discipline, the consistent refusal to allow fear or doubt to dictate your actions. Discipline is not about perfection, it is about commitment. It is choosing to show up even when motivation falters, even when the easy path calls louder. Each small victory over hesitation strengthens your inner resolve. The weak version shrinks when confronted by persistent action. But awareness and discipline alone are not enough. You must reframe failure itself. The weak self fears mistakes as final judgments. The strong self sees them as lessons, as guides on the path to mastery. Every setback is data. Every disappointment is a teacher. By embracing this mindset, you remove the power failure holds over you and weaken the version that would give up. Finally, surround yourself with the right influences. We are shaped by those we admire and the stories we consume. Choose mentors, peers, and content that reflect resilience, courage, and persistence. Their habits, attitudes, and successes will model the behaviors that annihilate the weaker self and cultivate your stronger self. Destroying the weak version of yourself is not a single act, it is a daily choice. Every decision to persist, every moment you push beyond fear, every time you stand when you would rather sit, you weaken the part of you that gives up. Over time, what once seemed impossible becomes natural. You become the person who refuses to quit, who creates a life defined not by hesitation, but by action, courage, and purpose. Your stronger self is waiting. It is not born in ease or comfort. It is forged in the crucible of challenge. Destroy the weak version today, not someday. Face the discomfort, embrace the struggle, and commit to the relentless pursuit of your best self. This is the only way to live a life that matters, a life free from the regrets of what could have been. 5 keynotes of the speech. Recognize and understand the weak version of yourself that surrenders when challenged. Develop discipline to act consistently even when motivation wanes. Reframe failure as feedback and learning, not as defeat. Surround yourself with resilient influences that model persistence and courage. Commit daily to actions that strengthen your stronger self and weaken the one that gives up. The first step to destroying the weak version of yourself that gives up is recognizing and understanding it. This weak version does not announce itself with fanfare. It hides in the small, subtle choices we make every day. It is the voice that whispers doubt when a challenge appears, the sensation that convinces you to delay, to settle, or to take the easier route. If you do not identify it, if you do not look it squarely in the face, it will continue to grow stronger, quietly shaping your decisions in your life. Awareness is the first weapon you possess. Without awareness, no amount of discipline or strategy will defeat this internal adversary, because the battle will always be fought blindly. You must begin by observing yourself honestly, noticing the moments when fear, comfort, or hesitation wins over determination and action. The weak version reveals itself in the decisions you regret, the projects left unfinished, the goals abandoned before they even begin. It shows up as procrastination, avoidance, and rationalizations. It is the part of you that convinces you that you are not ready, that you are not capable, that the timing is never right. And this weak version is cunning because it often presents itself as reason. It disguises fear as prudence, laziness as practicality, and quitting as a temporary necessity. To confront it, you must strip away these illusions. You must ask yourself when you feel like giving up, whether your decision is guided by truth or by the default behavior of avoidance that the weak self has trained into you over time. Self-reflection becomes essential. Journaling your thoughts, reviewing past failures, and analyzing your reactions to difficulty are tools that reveal the patterns your weak self exploits. Consider every instance when you abandoned a plan or walked away from a challenge. What was the emotional state driving that decision? What excuses did you tell yourself? What fears surfaced? This is not an exercise in guilt. It is an exercise in clarity. Recognition does not come passively. The weak version thrives when your mind is cluttered, distracted, and unexamined. It gains strength when you ignore your own habits and allow automatic reactions to guide you. By slowing down and observing your behavior with honesty, you begin to see the weak version for what it is: a set of conditioned responses, not an immutable part of your identity. Understanding it also means identifying its triggers. Perhaps it emerges when criticism is possible, or when risk is high, or when the effort required exceeds your current comfort zone. Maybe it dominates when you feel isolated, overwhelmed, or uncertain about the outcome. By recognizing these triggers, you gain predictive power. You learn to anticipate the moments when the weak self is likely to rise and you can prepare to counter it with conscious action. Awareness and understanding transform fear into strategy. You see the weak self not as an enemy to avoid, but as a signal to engage. Every hesitation, every impulse to quit is an opportunity to strengthen your stronger self. The more clearly you understand the weak version's methods, the less power it has over you. You also come to see that this weak self is not shameful, it is human. Everyone has a part of themselves that resists challenge, that seeks comfort, that avoids struggle. What separates those who succeed from those who remain stagnant is the ability to confront this part repeatedly and deliberately. A recognition requires courage. It is uncomfortable to examine the moments where you have fallen short, to admit the ways you have allowed fear to dictate your actions. But it is precisely this discomfort that serves as a catalyst for growth. The weak self can only operate in the shadows of unexamined thought. Once you shine light upon it through introspection and honesty, its influence diminishes. This process of recognition and understanding is continuous. It is not a single moment of insight, but a daily practice of observation, questioning, and reflection. Every time you pause before taking the easy route and ask yourself why, every time you note the impulses that make you want to surrender, you reinforce your awareness. You are building a mental map of your weak self, and a map allows you to navigate through challenges without getting lost in the patterns that once held you back. The weak version exists to protect you from discomfort, but its protection is deceptive. It keeps you small, limited, and unfulfilled. Recognition is the act of reclaiming power from this part of yourself, of saying, I see you. I know your tricks. I will not allow you to guide my life. And in this recognition, a foundation is laid. Awareness becomes the soil from which discipline, resilience, and courage grow. Without it, every effort to change will be met with unseen resistance. With it, every effort is targeted, intentional, and far more effective. Destroying the weak version of yourself begins with seeing it, understanding it, and refusing to allow it to operate unchecked. The moment you do this, the journey toward a stronger, more persistent, and courageous version of yourself has begun. Developing discipline is the next essential step in destroying the weak version of yourself that gives up. Discipline is often misunderstood as rigid self-denial or an unpleasant obligation, but in reality, it is the conscious commitment to act in alignment with your goals, regardless of fleeting emotions or temporary discomfort. The weak version of yourself thrives on inconsistency. It relies on moments of laziness, distraction, or emotional vulnerability to take control. Discipline is the force that overrides this weakness, the framework that allows your stronger self to emerge and sustain itself. It is not something you achieve once. It is something you cultivate daily, moment by moment. Every decision you make to stay committed to your path, even when it feels difficult, strengthens the neural pathways of persistence and resilience. The difference between giving up and pushing forward is rarely a matter of talent or luck. It is the accumulation of small, disciplined actions repeated over time. Discipline begins with clarity. You must know what you are committing to, why it matters, and what the desired outcome looks like. Without this clarity, effort is scattered, and the weak version seizes the opportunity to justify withdrawal. Once you have a clear target, discipline allows you to bridge the gap between intention and action. It is easy to feel motivated on days when everything aligns in your favor, but true growth comes when you act even when motivation wanes. The weak self counts on your moods, your energy levels, and your temporary frustrations to dictate your actions. Discipline neutralizes these fluctuations. It teaches you to prioritize long-term gain over short-term comfort, to resist the lure of immediate ease for the sake of lasting achievement. Practicing discipline requires structure. Habits, routines, and consistent practices are the scaffolding of persistence. By embedding small but meaningful actions into your daily life, you create momentum that is difficult for the weak self to disrupt. These actions do not have to be monumental, they must only be consistent. Making your bed every morning, dedicating a specific time to work toward your goals, maintaining a practice of learning and reflection. These are the bricks that build a fortress against surrender. The weak version often tries to trick you into believing that skipping a single action or giving in once is inconsequential. Discipline teaches you that each decision matters because patterns are built through repetition, and the path to strength is paved one deliberate action at a time. Another essential aspect of discipline is self-control, the ability to regulate impulses that divert you from your objectives. The weak self thrives on distraction and instant gratification. It tempts you with excuses, indulgences, or avoidance. Developing self-control means training your mind to respond intentionally rather than reactively. It is the choice to remain focused, to persist in effort, and to honor your commitments even when practice through the daily reinforcement of habits, attitudes, and behaviors that align with long-term goals. Every day presents an opportunity to make decisions that either empower or diminish the weak self. Even the smallest actions, repeated consistently, have compounding effects. Showing up when you do not feel like it, taking responsibility for tasks you would rather avoid, pushing yourself slightly further than yesterday, these are the moments that gradually erode the authority of the weak self. Daily commitment requires intention. You cannot rely on motivation alone because it fluctuates, it rises and falls like the tide. Discipline and purpose, supported by the conscious choice to act despite fluctuating energy or emotion, are what truly matter. By making a habit of deliberate action, you train your mind to prioritize persistence over comfort. Each day, when you honor your commitments, follow through on plans, or push beyond a perceived limit, You reinforce the neural pathways of determination. These pathways grow stronger with repetition, making perseverance more natural and surrender less likely. The weak version of yourself resists this process. It presents every task as optional, every challenge as negotiable, and every discomfort as a reason to retreat. By consistently choosing to act in alignment with your goals, you deprive the weak self of its power. Its influence diminishes because you no longer allow hesitation or fear to dictate your choices. Another critical aspect of daily commitment is the development of momentum. The weak self relies on stagnation, on allowing gaps between effort and intention to become excuses for inaction. By taking small, consistent steps each day, you create a forward motion that is difficult to reverse. Momentum amplifies effort, making each subsequent action easier to accomplish and reinforcing the habit of persistence. Daily commitment also fosters resilience. Life is unpredictable and setbacks are inevitable. When you consistently engage with your goals, even in the face of challenges, you train your mind and body to withstand discomfort, to adapt to obstacles, and to recover quickly from setbacks. This resilience is the antithesis of the weak self, which crumbles under pressure and seeks escape. The process of committing daily also builds self-confidence. Each completed action, each instance where you honor your promise to yourself affirms your capability. Over time, this cumulative evidence becomes undeniable. The stronger self grows in stature, while the weak self shrinks, unable to compete with the visible proof of persistence and achievement. Accountability is a crucial element of this commitment. By tracking progress, reflecting on accomplishments, and evaluating areas of improvement each day, you maintain a conscious connection to your actions and their consequences. The weak self thrives on unexamined routines and ignored responsibilities. Awareness and tracking remove its opportunity to operate unchecked. Daily commitment also requires flexibility and adaptability. The weak self often convinces you that setbacks are permanent and that deviation from the plan is failure. The stronger self understands that persistence includes learning, adjusting, and maintaining effort even when the path shifts. By embracing adaptability, you prevent the weak self from exploiting frustration or discouragement as justification for surrender. Finally, commitment daily reinforces identity. Over time, actions shape who you are more than intentions or aspirations. When every day includes choices that reflect courage, persistence, and effort, your identity aligns with your strongest self. The weak version loses relevance because your habitual actions define you as someone who does not quit. By committing consistently to these daily practices, you build a life where the strong self is the default, empowered and resilient, while the weak self fades into irrelevance. Through deliberate, consistent action, you create an unshakable foundation for growth, achievement, and fulfillment. The journey to destroying the weak version of yourself that gives up is not a single act. It is a continuous process of awareness, discipline, learning, influence, and consistent action. You begin by recognizing the part of you that hesitates, the self that convinces you to surrender, and you confront it with honesty and clarity. You develop the discipline to act even when motivation fades, strengthening the habits that make persistence natural. You reframe failure as a teacher, a guide, and an opportunity rather than a verdict, removing the fear that once allowed the weak self to dominate. You surround yourself with influences, people, environments, and ideas that model resilience, courage, and action, further empowering your stronger self. And you commit daily to choices and behaviors that reinforce persistence, steadily eroding the power of the weak self until it is no longer relevant. When all these elements come together, the version of yourself that gives up begins to disappear. You no longer rely on fleeting motivation or external circumstances to dictate your actions. You act with purpose, courage, and consistency. You embrace challenges and setbacks as part of the growth process, understanding that every obstacle is an opportunity to strengthen the stronger self. Over time, persistence becomes habitual, resilience becomes instinctive, and the weak version fades into the past. This is not just a path to achievement. It is a path to personal transformation. By committing to this journey, you take ownership of your life, your potential, and your future. You become the person who faces difficulties head on, who rises when others fall, and who refuses to surrender to fear or doubt. The weak version may have tried to define you in the past, but it no longer has the power to control your actions, your mindset, or your destiny. You are now defined by action, persistence, and the unwavering commitment to never quit. This is the life that emerges when the stronger self prevails, and it is a life worth pursuing every single day.